Okay, we are ready. Good afternoon, everyone, and very warm welcome to the fifth session of the DigiEduHack webinar series 2025. After our previous discussion on inclusive and adaptive education, today we are turning our focus toward one of the most transformative moments in the digital education. It's blended learning. Our topic is blended learning innovations from pilot to large-scale rollouts. We will explore how blended learning is evolving across Europe, from pilot programs and experimental classrooms to national strategies and sustainable institutional practices. Through this 1 hour, we will hear how EU frameworks such as DigiCompedo and Digital Educational Plan, alongside with other initiatives, actually helping in educators to transform teaching and learning. Joining me today, we have four amazing experts representing different regions and perspectives of Europe's blended learning landscape. I will now invite them, Elena Trepoulet from EDEL Digital Learning Europe. Welcome, Elena.
Good afternoon. Since 2022, I serve as the Secretary General of EDEL Digital Learning Europe, a leading European network advancing digital education in Europe for the recent 30 plus years. I'm also an associate professor at the Education Academy in Vytautas Magnus University in Lithuania, and researcher of multiple international research and also applied research projects and networks across Europe, as well as in EDEN, in the topics of open online learning, technology-enhanced learning, and adult education.
Thank you, Elena. Bart Fresveil from European SchoolNet and the Future Classroom Lab from Belgium. Bart, I hope that I pronounced your last name properly.
Okay, you did well. You did well. No problem.
Sorry.
No problem. No, you already mentioned European SchoolNet. This is where I work now, but I have a very long history in education. I was about 30 years a secondary classroom teacher, and then, as you said, I moved to Brussels to work for European SchoolNet, which is an organization of ministries of education in Europe, and the aim of the organization is to bring innovation in education and to support schools. And in 2012, I joined this organization because at that time they built the Future Classroom Lab, and maybe when you ask me some questions, I will refer to it in a moment. So very happy to be here, Slavko, and also for the rest of the audience here and my colleagues in the panel.
Thank you, Bart. The next is Victoria Belus from the National Center for Digital Innovation in Education from Moldova. Welcome, Victoria.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Slavko. Thank you, colleagues. Great to be here. I represent the National Center for Digital Innovations in Education Future Classroom Lab in Moldova. And as managing director, I have over 15 years of strategic and operational experience in education modernization, project management, curriculum innovation, teacher training, and international cooperation. We have 123 high schools across the country. Each of them have these FCL laboratories and technologies, and we help all of them, or I try to help all of them with digital tools so that they are thoughtfully selected and integrated where they provide measurable value, and that educators have the skills and confidence to drive change in the class. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Victoria, to being with us. And last but not least, Annie Chikwaidze. I hope also that I pronounce well your last name, from Ilia State University and Georgian Robotics Association from Georgia. Welcome, Annie.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting me. So I am Ani. I am project manager at Tech Entrepreneurship and Innovation Development Center at Ilia State University, and also I am director of the Georgian Robotics Association. So over the past few years, I've been leading and coordinating different tech and educational projects, and much of my work mostly focuses on transforming pilot initiatives into sustainable large-scale programs connecting non-formal and formal education together. And as for Robotics Association, this is non-commercial association dedicated to promoting robotics, STEM education into the country's ecosystem and bring together all the interested people in that field together. So I'm really happy to be here today and share my experience with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ani, and welcome to you all. It's actually wonderful to have all of you here. And I think we are ready to begin our discussion with the first segment, where we look at how blended learning is being shaped through policy and systematic innovation across the Europe. So according to this, I will invite Bart and Elena to start our discussion. Thank you both. And let's now start with the questions. Maybe we can start, Elena, with you. From European policy perspective, how do you see blended learning evolving within the context of the EU framework such as DigiEdu and the Digital Educational Action Plan?
Thank you, Slavko, for the question. First of all, blended is now the default option. It's not an emergency fix anymore. Since 2021, the EU has framed blended learning as a long-term, system-level approach, mixing learning environments such as school, maybe at home, outdoors, or workplaces, and also different modes, digital and non-digital, with the explicit aims to include and implement quality in education. The DigiEdu framework is increasingly used to structure the national CPDs, appraisal and self-assessment using the selfie for teachers, thus making blended practice measurable and also developable rather than ad hoc activity. If we would refer to digital education plan, then the building of high-performing digital ecosystem infrastructure, content, or platforms like European Digital Education Hub, also boosting digital skills for learners and staff, including teachers. Blended learning is kind of sitting inside this agenda as a quality-oriented redesign of teaching and not just a single tool adoption. And also we can speak of new formats of recognition, for example, through micro-credentials that are recorded in the Council recommendations with a common EU language to certify those short stackable learning units that are useful for teacher upskilling or reskilling, as well for students' flexible pathways. And there's also this initiative of Erasmus Plus blended intensive programs, BIPs, that mainstream hybrid mobility and curricula in higher education, thus kind of normalizing pedagogy-led blends across borders as well.
Thank you, Elena. I think you covered all of this perspective from the European policies, and I think you mentioned one important thing, that blended learning is not actually emerging; it's actually defaulting in today classrooms and on the all levels of education. But as Bart, coming from this European school network and the future classroom lab, you're helped many schools, yes, and adopt blended learning. And per your perspective, what does effective teacher professional development look like in this context? Bart, you are muted, sorry.
Okay, thank you. First of all, and since also my colleague Elena mentioned the word hybrid, I would like to clarify maybe the terminology a little bit because sometimes we have these discussions with teachers as well. So on the one hand, we have blended learning, which is the topic of today, but there's also the name hybrid learning, and quite often they are interchanged, but I think there is a slight difference between them. So I would say that the main difference is that blended learning is a combination of the things you do together under the supervision of a teacher. And also part of that blended learning scenario, I would say, there are some individual tasks which are not supervised by the teacher. And hybrid learning is more of providing a choice. And this is what we see often in higher education at universities and university colleges, that students can attend the lecture of the professor, but also have the option to stay at home and either watch directly when it is streamed, or later and watch the recording, and then some people call it hybrid flex, so because you have the flexibility to watch the recording later. So that is maybe a kind of difference between the two. But if we discuss blended learning, I think this is also happening in K-12 schools, and this is more the area of work that we have at European Schoolnet. However, we also support higher education, but it's mostly for K-12 schools who rethink the way they organize education. And it used to be that everything was under the supervision of a teacher, and then when the students got home, then almost nothing happened except for an individual homework. But that is changed by now. By the way, also for K-12, if I can mention this, I come from Belgium, Flanders, and since years we have what we call BedNet, which is let's say a service that is given to children who cannot attend because they have to stay in hospital or to have to recover at home, and then they can also attend in a hybrid mode the classes. But that's maybe not what we want to discuss today. So coming back to your question, in 2012, I already mentioned this, we made at the premises of European Schoolnet in Brussels this physical future classroom lab. Now, in fact, it's just a space to inspire schools. It's not a space that you would copy. We have the equipment that we get donated by our industry providers, but in fact, it's a hub for innovation. And since we built this lab and opened this in 2012, we have quite a lot of venues all over Europe. And if I may, I would really like to mention the venue of our colleague in the panel today, Victoria in Moldova. And maybe she will, I'm quite sure she will also mention it when she gets the questions. She also made this wonderful hub for education that really inspires the whole country, because we cannot bring everyone to this specific space. But there is also ways to reach out through online courses, to materials. We at European Schoolnet provided our audience with a scenario tool where they can create blended learning scenarios, etc. So please have a look at our website, and then I will answer your question. We have about 200 innovative learning spaces that are featured on the website FCL from Future Classroom Lab, fcl.eun.org, and there you'll find also maybe in your country inspiring venues that have the same approach to rethink how we organize education. And as I said, not everything is done anymore under the supervision of a teacher. It's a combination of the things you do together, and you give the freedom to your learners, because that's the final aim, to make them autonomous learners who become lifelong learners and who take the learning in their own hands. And the traditional classroom is more an approach of one size fits all, with the same level, the same pace, and blended learning scenarios offer the opportunity to, let's say, be more inclusive And when we later on may cover the AI approach, then we will see that we have so many tools nowadays where we can accommodate different learning preferences and different levels of students. And that's the main idea, that learning does not stop when you leave the school. It's a kind of attitude that you keep on learning. And also it becomes informal, but in the same way also meaningful. So our future classroom lab, when you enter it, then here quite often, because I deliver courses, 5-day courses, a few times per year. And then when they enter, the teachers say quite often, this looks like a kindergarten. And that's the right, let's say, description, because we start with kindergarten in a very flexible, open way. And in fact, they already are blended learners, I would say. They are autonomous sometimes. They do not follow each time all the instructions of the teacher. And this idea we try to bring to older learners. And it's also the idea where the classroom is not the limit. When we see many schools who adopted the idea, then we see that the whole school has become a learning environment. And of course, we also connect to learning at home through the different technology we have these days. But that's the idea, that we open up learning, and that we go and move away from the one size fits all, where the teacher controls every step of learning. And that's the idea we want to promote. But it's not so easy, because teachers are immediately attracted, but then when they go back to their school, things become more different, and we need to support them. And as I said, we have our online courses, we have our face-to-face courses, we have our materials and our tools, but it's also a matter of attitude that teachers need to adopt. And I'm also happy, and that's the last thing, because I'm maybe going over my time. I also have the pleasure to lead the network of Future Classroom Lab ambassadors, which are operational in 16 countries, and locally they all support this idea of maybe we don't call it blended learning, but in fact it is like this. That learning is less traditional, that there is more flexibility, more autonomy for learners, and so that's what we do, and I'm very happy to answer individual questions if you approach me, and if you think it could be interesting for you to see what we produce at European Schoolnet, and maybe join courses, etc. So
thank you, Bart, for a detailed overview of both of the European Schoolnet and the Future Classroom Lab. And already you received some questions in the Q&A. Our attendees are very welcome to ask, and you as the speakers, you can for example, when you will be free in the second segment, you can give the answers, and also you can share the links which you mentioned. Now we can switch to Elena, as she is leading with her colleagues Ed and Digital Learning Europe, one huge association, and based on what lessons has Ed and learned from pilot blended learning initiatives that successfully moved to national or international scale. Elena, could you somehow show us your experience from Eden as one of the main leading educational initiative in Europe?
Thank you, Slavko. Well, we see as a tech world is boosting with multitudes of tools, applications, and tech solutions, then Eden as a European network is, for the recent 30 plus years, has been trying to leverage the world of education with the pedagogical reasoning behind any kind of technology or tool. And in Eden annual conferences, research workshops, dozens of open webinars during our annual European Open Digital Learning Weeks each November, or as part of global initiative of Open Education Weeks in March, we are trying to provide educators a venue for discussions, research on how to use technologies intentionally. And besides, since 2023, Eden has developed a CPD event for leaders in education called DILA, Digital Education Leadership Academy, which is being hosted in Barcelona Catalan Open University, where leaders from different educational institutions are getting for a hands-on 3-day, very in-depth and intense training about transforming your institution digitally. And in that sense, scaling of blended learning of digital education may refer to several dimensions. We can refer to breadth, more subjects included, more campuses are blended, using blended designs. We can refer to the dimension of depth, where pedagogy improves. That means not just putting slides online. It's also about active learning, data-informed teaching, and also accessible design. The other dimension that we absolutely need to mention is equity, so that all students can participate. And that relates to devices, connectivity, accessibility, learner support, as well as teacher support, I would say. And sustainability, that is the question of stable funding, not just project-based funding, staff capacity, quality assurance, recognition, and also technology that lasts.
Thank you, Elena, for mentioning all of these important things. And I also would like to ask you, if possible, also to share the add-on link to our attendees. They can use it as the opportunity for the future training and development process. The same as I mentioned for Bart, to share him links in the Q&A, and then our attendees can take a look in the things what you are actually doing in practice. And Bart, one more question for you. How can schools design learning spaces, both physically and digitally, that truly support blended learning environments?
Well, I would like to say that changing the learning environment is not a change agent as such. It requires a whole school approach with all the stakeholders. And I often make the comparison with the introduction a long time ago with those interactive boards that replaced the chalk blackboards. Well, in fact, the result was, let's say, not so huge in changing the teaching practices, because the teachers often got those interactive boards as a kind of present, and it was a kind of superficial change. So that's one thing. If you would change the learning environment, like we promote in European Schoolnet, it would make quite a lot of teachers very nervous. They have not been trained to teach in a space like this. It requires a different pedagogical approach. And giving autonomy to students requires also mutual trust, because it's not only from the side of the teachers, but also from the side of the students, that they are not used to working in a different approach. So that is something that you should not forget. And very, very crucial, I would say, is collaboration of colleagues in the school. Well, if I can make one type of let's say layout that really works well in many schools, but of course you need to have the facilities, is that you have some classes, let's say 2 classes, and next to it you have a kind of breakout space that you can use, so that teachers who collaborate, the 2 of them, maybe can take one group into their class and give some individual tasks to the rest of the 2 classes, who can operate in that breakout room in smaller groups or individually. And that seems to work quite well. to get away, as I mentioned a few times already, from the one-size-fits-all approach. There is still some supervision, there is still some privacy, but that is a first step in making students autonomous learners in a kind of guided way. But still, what we need is that teachers get out of their comfort zone, and they also need to have a kind of pedagogical plan behind it. And that's what I want to do as well in my courses, that it may look as kind of chaotic, let's say, layout of students who operate in different corners of a space. There is still a strong plan behind it. And we see this successfully happening in many schools, but it requires some strategy behind it. As I said, you need to give guidance to teachers. You need to have training, and that's what we want to do. Just throwing away the traditional layout, I would never do, because it has its value. The teacher as a storyteller, it still has its place, but it should be more than that. So next to the traditional way of instructing, where you try to activate the whole class, you should give also autonomy. And that is quite often related to a space design in very strict traditional classrooms where you can hardly move furniture. Then, yeah, you are always, let's say, forced to keep on the same type of instruction. And if you dare to use, quite often you have in schools unused spaces as learning spaces, then you may take some smaller steps forward. But we also have to bear in mind that not all teachers are the same. You have in every school innovators, you have tech-savvy teachers, that is everywhere, but you also have teachers who are more traditional, and quite often you have teachers who are a bit nervous, who are a bit afraid of all the evolutions that are coming to society in general, but also to schools, of course. Now, maybe one thing to mention, because the digital part, we used to have it quite strongly, and I hate to go back to that period, to the COVID period, where students were at home, and where you have those plenary sessions in a video call for your students, and then the students were supposed to work on their own. Well, we have to admit that it was not a full success at all. But I think there are some positive things as well that we kept from that period, and maybe not only for the students but also for the teachers. When I look around in my family, where I have some teachers as well, they quite often have their meetings nowadays online with other teachers, whereas in the past had to go to their schools. They have also meeting with schools, so there is this infrastructure there, but we're all happy, and they are all happy that we have the social connection again in the school. But there is still some, let's say, legacy of that period, where in many schools you still want to give this autonomy to students, and where you have also, let's say, learning online. Now, there is in this area, in this time, let's say, and also in many countries, some initiatives from politicians to move away from screen time, and to ban smartphones in schools. And that is sometimes a problem as well. Well, my personal opinion is that I wouldn't say that there is a real problem during the lessons, but maybe students have too much of the screen time in the breaks, but also at home. So I would like to keep the balance there as well, and not to completely ban all screen times in schools. But yeah, that's for the politicians often to decide. So it's all about balance, I would say. It's blended learning is a model where the teacher can still be the storyteller it has for sure its value, but students also need to be active players in a full blended learning scenario without the supervision of a teacher. And I would say it's not necessary to do it online. How they operate in a school is also a very valuable way of blended learning. That is something that can be a model, especially for, not only for older learners, but for kids that are out of kindergarten, I would say.
But thank you for your overview, and also you mentioned a lot of important things, and I think your conversation between Elena and you will definitely open some new challenges for our participants in the DigiEduHack, which will be held from the 7th of November, and they can go with some solution in the blended learning. But now, before we'll switch to the second part of discussion with Annie and Victoria, I would like to also include our attendees. As I mentioned already, you had the opportunity to ask in the Q&A, but now I will share one poll with you to see your opinion about topics, and I hope that you now can see this. What is the biggest challenge in scaling blended learning at your institution? Lack of infrastructure, insufficient teacher trainings, policy or administrative barriers, student engagement issues, or funding and sustainability? We will have about 1 minute to answer, and then we'll see. Okay, few seconds more. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We are ready to share our results. Okay, it's interesting actually that there is different challenges, and the main one was the insufficiency of teacher trainings, but it's followed by lack of infrastructure and funding and sustainability. Elena, you mentioned some kind of sustainability during your speech, and also we can see that maybe the last challenge is actually student engagement. This is really interesting insights from our attendees, but okay, teacher training is maybe the most difficult challenge according to the adoption of blended learning. Okay, now as we can see the big picture, let's move into the more narrow down and to see where blended learning meets real classroom and innovative teachers initiatives. Joining me for these segments are Victoria and Annie, two leaders who are actually turning blended learning from theory into practice. And now we can start with the questions to Victoria. Victoria, Moldova has made impressive progress with the DigiProf program and the future Classroom Lab. What policy and leadership decisions were key to scaling these national blended learning initiatives?
There were several of them as key leadership and policy decisions that allowed Moldova to scale its blended learning ecosystem. The most important one is the strategic alignment with EU frameworks. From the beginning, we aligned the DigiProf activity and the Future Classroom Lab with the CompeDo framework, which provided a validated structure for teacher digital competence. And this alignment made our national programs more relevant, more measurable, and we very much hope recognizable at the European level one day. Another activity or another decision on the go is embedding blended learning into national policy. Our Ministry of Education and Research doesn't treat DigiProf or model schools or FCL schools as isolated projects. Instead, they intend to integrate it into our national systems of CPDs. And this means that all training are going to be formally recognized, scalable, and connected to teacher career growth. We also established the Clasa Viitorului Center or Future Classroom Lab Center as a national coordination hub. And here I would like to express our thanks to Bart for mentioning it earlier, and in general for helping us with expertise and advice throughout these almost 7 years of developing activities in our hub. Thank you, Bart, very much. So this gave our efforts a stable operational base that we help in building institutional infrastructure in these 123 schools. Also, the trainer model and ambassador networks is the vision or the activity that we invested throughout these years in a waterfall training structure. So a core group of facilitators in a growing network of over 100 digital ambassadors, trained peers in every regions throughout the country. And this model enabled us to reach over 25,000 teachers with blended programs between 2020 and 2023 without overwhelming central capacity. And one of the most important principles in general, I believe, not only in policies or leadership decisions, is the digital equity as a guiding principle. So we're trying to make digital equity a priority by assuring rural and underserved schools with same possibilities. So that underserved schools were the first to get blended learning tools and teacher support. And we believe that this helped build trust and encourage in general participation.
Thank you, Victoria, for showing the situation in Moldova, but also to show the connection. Like, I think it's one of the main missions for the education to connect the network, all of us from different sides of the worldwide, but actually we are now basically talking about Europe things. But I think you now show some real example of collaboration, and also the both of you are the national ambassadors in the DigiEduHack initiative, you for Moldova and Bart for Belgium. Now we can see a little bit to go in Georgia, and Ani, as you have worked extensively on transforming pilot projects into large-scale programs, what do you see as the key success factors for scaling blended learning in Georgia?
Thank you. Yes, I have been working on several pilot projects that have scaled across Georgia, especially in the areas of blended and tech-based education. And in that regard, different funding programs, like for our country, plays crucial role, like European Union programs, Erasmus Plus programs, and also US Embassy and other projects. So to go back from the start to the key steps, for example, learner readiness and engagement is really important. For example, student motivation, efficiency, prior digital experience. So these all together strongly influence on blended learning outcomes. For example, in Georgia, this means we must actively support students, especially in rural areas and in regions, not just provide devices or any infrastructure, but also to build their confidence and digital skills, because it is really one of the main challenges here. Also, our colleagues just mentioned that teacher capacity and training is also really important to be ready for this kind of blended learning model. So teaching style, comfort with technology, positive attitude have really important role and effect on blended learning success. So we have seen this in our programs, and in many regions, especially in rural areas, digital resources are limited. So we have, for example, from our experiences, one of the most successful projects was European Union funded project, which was tech clubs across 8 regions of Georgia, where we have funded in 100 schools, state schools, like tech clubs, where students, more than 2,000 beneficiaries, were able to teach non-formal educational subjects, topics, up to 10 training courses we had, from programming languages to design programs. So this was really crucial. It was a 4-year project. We have started it before COVID pandemic, so it was really challenging for us, but as we have seen, the results was really brilliant. So from this point of view, we have also learned that hybrid delivery is really essential. Like during COVID pandemic, when educational institutions worldwide we are forced to move fully online, it was really difficult, but with blended formats, we combined this digital content with hands-on experience and in-person collaboration. And for Georgia and for our university, for example, this was really challenging because most of the schools were not ready in this kind of challenge. For example, blended learning, it's kind of new for us. So, but we just still managed. For example, for universities, it was much more easy. For example, we were able to quickly adapt to this kind of online activity and continue to work in that area. In fact, we expanded our activities, launching new online training courses and help students to engage more online and also on-site activities. And also DigiEduHack was one of the main projects which we have found during this period. So this blended learning was really successful for us. But to make also all of this sustainable, government support is also essential and one of the most important things. In our case, nearly every important educational institution requires some level of alignment with national policy or cooperation with public institutions. So once the state creates like enable environment through infrastructure, funding programs, and all of these projects are more safe. But I want to also be honest, and today we are facing really difficult political moment in Georgia. The recent educational proposals and the wider political climate have created real uncertainty for many organizations, many institutions, so which is really challenging for us. So in our case, nearly every meaningful initiative requires some sort of level alignment with national policy. So to wrap everything up, like we need to ensure that good projects are not just celebrated when they start. We need to support them after a starting point of and scale it and to be sustainable. So, and to integrate it into long term, and that only can happen when there is trust and cooperation and openness in all the levels. So that's just wrap up of my experience.
Thank you, Ani. Now we have also the overview of the situation in Georgia, and actually both of you represent inspiring national models, and maybe now we are ready to go deeper into teaching and learning practices. And Victoria, as our attendees also mentioned, one of the main challenges is related to teacher trainings, and according to this, my question is for you is how do you balance the digital skills development of teachers with the pedagogical redesign required for blended learning?
Thank you, Slavko. Yeah, we approach teacher digital development as part of holistic pedagogical transformation, not just a technical upgrade, of course. The balance lies in how we sequence and integrate both dimensions. So it's all about balance, as Bart says earlier. Well, first, we build digital confidence. Yeah, teachers begin with practical skills first, learning how to use tools, like, for example, Google Workspace, video platforms, LMSs, such as Moodle, for example, or collaborative apps. So this foundational fluency reduces anxiety and builds this sense of control. Second, we introduce blended learning design. So once comfortable with the tools, teachers move into lesson redesign and learning how to structure sessions and to combine asynchronous and synchronous learning to promote student agency, to maintain engagement. Also using DigiEduHack as a roadmap, it's one of our training pathways that are mapped to DigiEduHack levels A1 to C2. At the moment, we are conducting classes or training throughout the country on level A and level B. So we managed to cover 3,000 teachers. So in August, now we are conducting level B until the end of this year. So we hope by the end of next year's academic year to have the 10,000 K-12 teachers that are prepared to to be offered the A or B or even C levels according to DigiEduHack. We hope that this will give teachers a clear sense of progress in both technical and pedagogical domains. Also, we use a lot of active learning methods. The teachers co-design micro-learning projects, implement them in their classrooms, and then reflect in community of practice sessions. So this cycle ensures that the digital tools support learning outcomes rather than distract from them, okay? So I said earlier that we have a community of 123 schools and more than 100 teachers that we call national trainers or ambassadors. So these help in peer mentorship and serve as blended facilitators in offering training to their colleagues. So we blended our own training programs using these hybrid formats to training teachers both online and in person, modeling the very practices we expect them to apply. So we very much hope that by balancing digital skills and pedagogical redesign, and by putting them together, teachers will be more developed and more ready for the future challenges, let's say this way.
Thank you, Victoria, and thank you also. I think that we are connecting somehow the topics of the webinar, and you also mentioned the DigiComp Edu, and I think it will be really interesting to see, because the new edition will be published most probably until the end of the year, which will cover the emerging topics related to the AI and the cybersecurity and other things. I was the part of the stakeholder group, and in the meantime, we received some question in the Q&A, and maybe you can give the answer on this question during any response. But related to Ani, you mentioned like one of the good example, youth tech clubs or AI clubs. So I would like now to ask you, how do hackathons and project-based initiatives, like you mentioned, this youth tech club or AI clubs, contribute to blended learning environment?
Yes, so project-based learning and especially hackathons, for example, are not just educational formats, they are transformation tools for me and for our experience. They turn passive learners into active creators. They play a significant role in blended learning ecosystem as they bridge formal and non-formal education, integrate online and face-to-face communication format, and help develop digital and creative collaborative skills during these events. For example, for our point of view, these are among the most effective ways to enhance student engagement and motivation, because the hackathon participants don't just learn like programming or technical problem-solving skills. They also develop critical thinking and effective communication and teamwork skills. So all of which are really core elements for blended learning. So hackathon teach students how to, for example, work with the real world challenges, and like DigiEduHack is one of the main examples for this kind of experience. For example, they require diverse teams, programmers, designers, etc. So these together really affects and reflects real industry dynamics. So for example, for our project experience, as I have mentioned, tech clubs and AI clubs, when we started these programs, this blended learning format wasn't really famous in our country. So this was kind of new thing in Georgia. And during COVID pandemic also, we tried to adapt to the new system. And also it was really hard for teachers too, because they had to learn all the new tools and all the new online formats to just learn everything, and then they had to just like share it with their learners and high schoolers. So it was really difficult, but we have managed that, and also we have set an online platform like where we integrated all the resources, toolkits, and learning materials for all the teachers and also learners. So whenever they needed it, they needed them, they could download them and they could integrate it into their teaching model. And that's how it works, how this model works. For example, we have trained teachers online, for example, and then after the online training, they have just started to train other learners in their regions or their schools. So that's how it was impactful for us. And also there was question about AI in the question, like in our chat. And yeah, AI is really nowadays it is one of the most important tools for us and in the learning, but we have to use it really correctly to be like to be good. So we use it, we actively use it because in our world we need to know all the new different tools, and we are teaching our students, for example, or teachers, all the new tools. So how can they use them in education? For example, there are a lot of tools for educational, for example, presentation, or a lot of helpful things to get. So we are integrated them in, for example, entrepreneurial learning, also in design thinking and all of the other stuff. So yeah, for example, so when we talk about scaling blended learning, I believe that project-based formats like hackathons or any other projects is really essential and important. Yeah, so thank you.
Thank you, Annie, and thank you for giving us overview of your organization. Also to mention some challenges, because these challenges could be actually the ideas for our hackathons participants, how we actually can solve them. And also thank you for answering the question from our attendees. And as we are approaching in the final 10 minutes, time is going so quickly in our webinar because of your interesting insights and interesting discussion. Now maybe we can have all four of you with us. So I hope that Elena and Bart are still with us. Yeah, okay, perfect. And as you are now fresh, Elena and Bart, I will start with the last questions with you, and then we will continue with Victoria and Annie. First question will be to Elena. Elena, let's actually view how can European network like EDEN foster stronger collaboration between universities, ministries, and EdTech provides to ensure sustainability of blended learning models? Because you mentioned sustainability, our attendees mentioned sustainability. I think it's a really important question.
Thank you, Slavko, for your question. EDEN Digital Learning Europe as a European network has been providing venues for panels, share of research and best practices, as well as dissemination of project results for practitioners, academics, and policymakers, and digital education for the recent 3 decades and more. And we would see that the mission of EDEN and similar umbrella networks is to support high standards based on academic research data instead of easy, fix, fast solutions featuring one or another commercial decision or tools. I'm short here.
Thank you, Elena. Bart, question for you. What practical strategies can help schools transition from isolated blended pilots to a whole school blended learning approach? You're muted again.
Sorry again. Maybe I'm not so fresh anymore as you, but I will try to answer your question. This is a difficult question, I would say, and having a top-down approach might not be so successful. I think we have to start in schools with trying to change the school culture. And if I may, I would like to go back to my former school long time ago, before AI and maybe also before computers in general. In the section of the vocational area of my school, we had every term a project week. And instead of having all the subjects one in a row, like we have in secondary education, where teachers hop from one classroom box to another to deliver a kind of academic subject. We had our project week, and that was in fact not a subject, but a topic, and that worked really quite well. We also organized one outdoor school activity, and we didn't call it blended learning, but in fact it was a kind of different approach to learning, giving also students autonomy. And what made it so successful is that all teachers contributed to it, and you have in every school, as I already mentioned, advanced teachers who are not afraid of this different approach. And under the umbrella, let's say, with the help of teachers who are more advanced, we all came to this type of product, which was, as I said, this 1 week of working on a topic with this type of students. And that is, I think, an approach that could work. But of course, yeah, sometimes also policy and government needs to give a certain push to schools. But just implementing a very innovative approach from one day to another might not work. So collaboration is really crucial, I would say, in schools. Building innovation groups, that is also what we are now doing in Flanders, especially also to create your own AI policy in schools. So all schools are asked to think about it and to come together, and at the same time also create pedagogical plans around it to integrate it, because that is also very important. So practical strategy to make a transition from those pilots here and there to come to, let's say, a mainstreaming of this approach is difficult, but I think it has to do with smaller initiatives and trying to change the school culture in a school, and I think that is really crucial. And especially also, I think that teachers should connect to teachers outside their own school environment. I always mention the second staff room when I do my courses, that all teachers should create, become part of networks, connect to teachers outside your school, learn what others are doing. And this is sometimes not happening too much with the majority of teachers. They just go to the school and they think their own school is like all schools work, which is not the case. So connecting to all to other teachers out there through programs like eTwinning, for instance, is something that could make a change. And if I may briefly mention eTwinning, this is in fact an approach for blended learning, where you collaborate with your class with another school abroad, where you get a free platform and where you have a kind of project work, project-based learning. You have the possibility to share online. And so that is, I think, a very good approach to have a strategy to bring these new ideas of blended learning on a larger scale. And to be honest, eTwinning already exists for 25 years, I think. So that is happening already, but it can always be better. Yep, that's about it. I would say, Slavko, if that's enough for you.
Thank you, Bart, and thank you for mentioning collaboration. Now we can ask two questions for Victoria and Dani related to these things. Victoria, what role do partnership with UNICEF and other international organizations play in bridging blended models from pilot to national practices?
Well, in general, international partnerships have been vital in Moldova's shift from experimentation to systemic integration. But especially UNICEF in particular helped us in launching DigiProf during this critical period. And their support allowed us to co-develop content, integrate digital safety, equity, and evaluate impact from an early age. The other organizations that we worked with also helped us in designing monitoring tools aligned with the Pompidou and provided strategic advice that strengthened our national rollout. But perhaps more importantly, they enabled cross-country learning. helping us adapt successful practices from peers in the region. Well, to sum up, in general, we have a lot of support from international partnerships. They serve as catalysts for scaling. They help us in quality assurance and monitoring. We have a lot of policy support, cross-national peer learning. And I think the most important probably is that these partnerships helped us building national capacity, not just deliver training. They supported the formation of local expert teams, which now lead and sustain programs independently. So we're very thankful to these partnerships. Yeah, thanks for mentioning it.
Thank you, Victoria and Ani. What role do international partnerships, as Victoria mentioned the importance of them, play in the sustaining innovation once the pilot phase is over?
Yes, as you mentioned, like these international partnerships are essential for transforming pilot projects into long-term innovations, and especially in countries like Georgia, where local ecosystems are still developing. So these partnerships provide more than just financial support. They bring just global expertise and tested methodologies, also peer learning across different contexts, and also visibility and legitimacy and policy alignment, especially, for example, with the from our experience, like especially with EU standards and digital educational standards and action plans, which was really important to develop in this direction. In our case, yes, projects were able to scale and sustain really good because they were supported by our international partners, especially European Union, and our country adapted successfully like practices from Europe and from other regions. That's why it is most crucial and important to learn more about other countries and other practices and whether or not it is good for our ecosystem. And these partnerships help us to align local innovation with more broader goals like digital inclusion, gender equality, digital equity, etc. So the lesson is really clear. So innovation, like partnerships, are really important, and I am really thankful for the European and other partners for this to help us in innovation and in all of this. So
Thank you, Ani. And now I think we are really close to the end of the webinar, and I will use the opportunity to say huge thank you to all of our speakers, Elena, Bart, Victoria, and Danny, for sharing such valuable insights and experience. Today's discussion, I think, has shown us that scaling blended learning is not just a technical challenge, it's actually cultural transformation that connects different stakeholders, educated policymakers, and innovators across borders. A quick reminder, I also received some emails. Already, all registered participants will receive their certificates of attendance after the 6th webinar, because we already delivered for the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, and 4th, 5th, and the 6th will be delivered on the 7th of November before we start with our DigiEduHack. And this isn't the end. As I mentioned to you, join us again for the last webinar for this year in November, one day before DigiEduHack competition starts. So it will be on the 6th of November. Until next time, I would like to say also thank to all attendees who join us for your questions and for your insights during this pool. And until next time, stay inspired, stay connected, and keep innovating. Thank you all so much. See you in November. Bye-bye.